Hi, welcome to Presentation Station 2 for our Algebra and Liberal Arts class, fraction and integer review videos. Today I'm going to be covering how to add and subtract fractions, and we may or may not throw in a little bit about integers, especially given with fractions. Okay, the first thing I want to look at is how do you add and subtract fractions? This has caused many students problems over the entire course of middle school and even on into high school. So what we want to do is look at some simple examples. The first example I'm going to give is 1/2 plus 1/4. Some people can figure this out already. If I have a half of something and a quarter of something, then I put the first half together plus the quarter of one, and when I put them all together, I will have the quarter that goes up here plus the half that was shaded, and my answer would be 3/4, or I call 3/4, 3/4 of a whole. However, when we look at it in the mathematical form, 1/2 plus 1/4, we need a way to do this, and I want to tell you the biggest mistake that I see students make all the time. Because you see the plus sign, often students think you should just add across the bottom. 2 plus 4 is 6, and then 1 plus 1 is 2. This is completely wrong. Do not ever do this. Get that out of your mind completely. Adding fractions can be a bit of a challenge if you are trying to get this done correct. So here, I want to show you a trick. The trick is how to get this done quickly using multiplication. But why would I use multiplication when I'm adding? Just trust me on this. You see, the trick that I have is this. I use a method called criss-cross across the bottom. It's an X with a line under it. I also call this a symbol. This is a symbol you can go to in your mind when you're remembering how do I add these fractions. I call this your SOS flag. An SOS flag is something you wave when you say, oh no, I need help, I surrender. Well, what we're surrendering to here is a simple method to add fractions. Again, called crisscross across the bottom. It's an X with a line under it. Here's what it looks like. I would take that X and I would draw it into my problem with a line under it. That's here in the brown. So what that means is I'm going to actually multiply the connections that I've made. So 1 and 4 are here for the criss, so I do 1 times 4, which is 4. Then I'm going to do this cross, the other part of the X, which is 2 times 1, which is 2. Then across the bottom is 2 times 4, which is 8. I'm going to put that on the bottom of those. What I have done now is I've done times, times, and times. It's important to remember the 2 that went across the top, the 2 crosses are now on the top, and the 1 across the bottom is on the bottom. When I go back to my original problem, I see that this was addition. It was a plus sign. So I'll keep a plus sign in the middle of my 4 and my 2. Now I can actually do my addition. 4 plus 2 is 6, and 8 is just on the bottom. So it's 6/8. Now 6/8 right now is not in lowest terms or simplified. If you need help going back and simplifying this to lowest terms, I recommend you watch the previous video where we talked about how to simplify or reduce 6/8. But for now, your 6/8 can be divided by the greatest common factor of 2, which would give us 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. Remember, that was the original answer we got before when we did this visually by putting the half together with the quarter. So I want to move on to another example that gets a little bit harder, and I still want to use this method. Remember, our method is crisscross across the bottom. I say it that way just to help myself remember. So I'm going to take my next problem and I'm going to make it a little bit harder. This time I'm going to give you two different levels. One is I'm going to give you a mixed number, 3 1/5. I'm going to give you a subtraction, which is different from our last example. And then I'm going to give you another mixed number. So here what we need to be able to do is convert these mixed numbers to improper fractions. If you remember how to do that, go ahead and start now. I'm going to remind those of us who forgot. We start from the bottom and we're going to go clockwise by multiplying and adding. So 5 times 3 is 15. 15 plus 1 is 16. Remember, your denominator always stays the same, so I keep the 5 underneath. I still have a minus sign in the center. Over here, I'm going to do the same thing. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 is 5 over 4. Now, one key thing to mention, if your denominators were exactly the same, you would only have to work with your numerators. But because our denominators are not the same, we have to go ahead and find another way to solve this. Typically what would happen here is you would find a common denominator and you would have to convert this again to a new level. I find a lot of people get tripped up on that, and so we use our trick to solve this a little more quickly. So here I do crisscross across the bottom. Our numbers are getting a little bit larger, but don't be nervous about that. So first I have 16 times 4. Well, if I come off to the side, I can use my calculator. You could do it in your head. But otherwise, if you did 16 times 4, you get 64. And then 5, that was my Chris. 5 times 5 is 25. And across the bottom, 5 times 4 is 20. Remember, the across the bottom goes on the bottom. Go ahead and make your fraction bar and look back to your original problem. Our original problem now was subtracting. It was a minus sign. So I need to remember to put that minus sign right there in the center of the 64 and the 25. Those were the numbers I got when I multiplied the Chris and multiplied the cross. Now I can just go ahead and do that math. 64 minus 25, you can put in your calculator or go ahead and do it the longhand way. You can't subtract 5 from 4, so I borrowed from the 6, made it a 5, and I borrowed a whole 10. 14 minus 5 is 9, and 5 minus 2 is 3. Now I get an answer of 39 over 20. Now, this is an improper fraction, which is to be assumed considering I started with mixed numbers, that I can convert this back into a mixed number. Now, if you're not sure how to do that, let's go through the steps very quickly. 39 over 20 is the same as saying 39 divided by 20. Well, how many times can 20 go into 39? One time, because 20 times 20 is 20. That large whole number tells me how many times it can go into the 39. But what would be my remainder? Since 20 times 1 is 20, how many more do I need to get to 39? Well, the difference between 39 and 20 is 19. So 19 becomes my new numerator. And you remember, we always keep the same denominator. That rule holds true right here. So 39/20 as an improper fraction converts to 1 19/20 as a mixed number. That was a lot to take in one example. Let's review. We changed our mixed number to an improper fraction. We used our trick of crisscross across the bottom to multiply, multiply, and multiply. We set up our problem up and down on the top and the bottom of the fraction bar, and then we made sure we were subtracting because our original problem was subtracting. I went ahead and did the math, and I got an improper fraction, and I changed it back into a mixed number because this is the most proper form. Now on a test, if you see that they're not giving you a mixed number form, but they're okay with the improper fraction, go ahead and feel confident and select this answer. All right, So that's adding and subtracting fractions using crisscross across the bottom. Hope that was a really great review for you. There's one other thing that I do want to review for you, and I think what I'm going to do is save it for the next video. I want you to get some practice in this section first. So if you are following along with me on the fraction review page that's been given out in class, or attached with the link below, you can go ahead and do section 5 that says evaluate. Evaluate means to go ahead and solve the problem. It goes from A to I. Good luck, and if you have any questions, come see me or comment below.